time for Screen Junkies Movie Fights. Today's episode of Movie Fights is brought to you by Squarespace. Whether you need a domain website or online store, make it with Squarespace.
Fights. Welcome, everybody. Guess what? We're doing it again. And this show, it's not just going to be fun, but it might just get intense up in here because we have the 3 top contenders for the Movie Fights Championship, which is currently held by a felted friend, don't call him a puppet, named Cucumber, I think his name is. That's weird. If you're just joining us and have no idea about that, yeah, this is the truth. But we have the 3 top contenders who are all jonesing for that belt and ready to answer some Movie Fights questions to the best of their abilities. Let's meet him, shall we? First up, he's a good friend of the show. He's one of the co-hosts of Marvel Movie News. He's a bon vivant and a gentleman. Please welcome JANDREAU.
I am so excited. This is my favorite game on the internet and 2 people I love to fight. I'm very excited about this game in particular. Like, I've been gearing up. I'm ready. I'm ready.
I just got a call.
Comic-Con zeal.
That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that, but I just got a call from the Schmoes, and they're upset that you called us your favorite game on the internet.
Sorry about that, Schmoes, but one of these I do well in.
We love you. We love the Schmoes. Coy, thanks for being here, brother.
Absolutely, man.
This guy always brings the pain. He is an esteemed nerd. I would like to welcome the Nerd Goat himself, the host of the Nerd Goat podcast, Ed GREER.
Dude, thank you guys so much for having me again. I love to battle Coy. We seem to be in a Defiant Ones sort of situation.
Great reference. Defiant Ones, Sidney Poitier, Tony Curtis, handcuffed together.
Yeah,
Great flick.
We're chained together throughout
this
this
is happening. No cat questions.
No cats, no bunny rabbits. So basically, I love this game, and I'm really glad to participate in the Cucumber Death Match.
Oh, hell yeah. Ed, thanks for being here. And this guy, oh man, he wants his belt back. He wants it back real bad.
I do, really badly.
You know him from all over Screen Junkies, SJ News, and from holding all sorts of movie-related game titles. Mr. Dan MURRELL.
Been wandering in the desert, Hal. It's time to come in, grab that belt back. But I have to defeat these 2 very worthy and formidable opponents first. So this is no walk in the park. This could be tough.
No, sir.
Tough, Hal.
Or maybe a walk in the park if that was a really dangerous park.
A very dangerous park at night with no exterior lighting.
Yes.
You're Frank Castle
full of
walking the
hazards.
Yeah, like some sort of Frank Castle or John Wick style park.
I'll take that part. I'm taking part of that part.
Dan, excited to see this epic smackdown. And deciding this battle is going to be 3 judges, myself, and the Dan Cam, which there's a Lon on the Dan Cam right now. Lon Harris in the fact-checking seat. Lon, what's going on, brother?
I should leave. I think we should have a Dan here. We should find another Dan.
It's too late. We're already live.
This is us creator Dan Fogelman doing today.
I'll be crying by the end of this episode. He does that to me every time.
Or Disney Channel Dan Schneider.
Screenwriter Dan Futterman, if you're available.
Simpsons Dan Castellaneta is coming in.
Please respond in the comments with other Dans.
Favorite Dan.
Lon, always great to have you. And the voice of the people. She is just a woman of many talents. Welcome, Danielle Radford, as per usual.
Hi. So as y'all know, the way this works is that in the case that there is a lockup or a tie, that is
A lockup?
A lockup.
Who's getting locked up?
It's a dangerous one.
Sorry, you think about wrestling?
No, I'm just being a dick.
You're the worst. I went to Paris. Now I ain't got no manners.
Sorry, Parisians.
Yeah, just like the French. Sorry.
Yeah, so the way this will work, there are going to be some really fun polls and other ways you can participate on the Movie Fights Live hashtag on Twitter. I'll also be looking for funny memes, funny comments, any kind of insightful comment as well. But if you are looking for the official poll, that will be the one that goes up once all 3 fighters have presented their initial arguments, and then you will get to weigh in. And we do it because we want to make sure that it's about the arguments, not just about which movie that you like. If you have any questions about how that works, go on down to the description below, or you can ask someone in the chat.
Thank you, Danielle. You're the bestest.
You're the bestest.
Before we jump into the fun, the Professor Lon Harris is going to school us about a little something. Professor, take it away.
So we do want to, before we get to our first round, we want to give a shout out to our good friends over at Squarespace. They are sponsoring today's show. And if you didn't know already, they are the place to go if you want to create your online identity. And that's whether it's a side hustle, whether it's your main gig, your personal brand, whatever you need. Squarespace is the place to go to do it. It has never been easier to sell products or services online, and Squarespace is an all-in-one platform providing 24-hour customer support, and there's nothing to install, patch, or upgrade. Ever. Not ever. So make sure to check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/screenjunkies. Squarespace.com/screenjunkies. You'll save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
Lon,
What a deal.
That's so nicely put. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Last time I did that, I feel like I went a little fast, so I tried this time very deliberately to slow down.
I thought you did a fine job, and I look
appreciate
forward to us building our website dedicated to owls.
Yes, we got an owl. We share a love and enthusiasm for owls, as we've discovered.
That's a callback that I should stop calling back.
I don't, never.
Never.
Not
All right,
once.
thank you. Lon, I appreciate that. Professor, JTE, what are we waiting for? Let's drop that package.
Prepare to die. Ladies and gentlemen. No. It's main event time. Finish him!
Thank you, JTE, for always being willing to show us your awesome package. All right, let's get to it. Question number 1. MGM has announced that Chucky's getting a reboot. Everything's getting rebooted, guys. What's the all-time greatest slasher franchise, considering all of the films together? Okay, so all the films of that franchise. What is the all-time greatest slasher franchise? Coy, starting with you.
So we're talking all-time greatest considering all of them. So I'm talking consistency, I'm talking goodness, I'm talking rewatchability, I'm talking flair and flavor. I'm talking, of course, about Wes Craven's Scream, an evolution in horror films, a movie that not only references classic horror films, but becomes a classic horror film. This is a movie that did meta before it was popular. This is a movie that was self-aware before it was cool. This is a movie that introduced us to a new type of horror film that is still referenced to this day. This is a movie franchise that is so good that it not only survived a reboot, it survived an entire franchise of movies referencing it, the Scary Movie franchise, and kept going and getting better. The first film does an amazing job of being self-referential of past horror films. The second film does an amazing job of being referential of the first film. The third film does an amazing job of being referential of legacy, and the fourth, after a decade in not existing, does a great job of referencing reboots. The Scream franchise touches on everything while being scary, while having a good villain, while having great twists, while balancing comedy and horror, and while having the right amount of sex without being gratuitous, but also balancing the fear being real. It's very hard to balance like sex, comedy, scares, and have a good villain and have good twists. Scream does it, and it does it consistently for 4 movies, and it is the best slasher franchise.
All right, Coy coming in guns blazing with Scream. Ed, what do you got?
Well, I think, the standard bearer of the genre. It has the most movies, I do believe, in its franchise history. It's shown an immense malleability of concept, and that is Friday the 13th. Now, let me tell you a little story about Friday the 13th, guys. Friday the 13th, when Sean Cunningham, the director, came up with the idea, he was for another movie. He comes up with this idea, he says, Friday the 13th, this other movie I'm trying to do, I'm pitching it all over the town, I can't sell this. Friday the 13th, I could sell anything with this title. And true indeed, he buys a big ad in Variety, puts it in there, Friday the 13th, scariest horror movie of all time. Foreign distributors, all types of people come to him with money, wanting to get in on this motion picture. That is how magnetic the concept of Friday the 13th is in and of itself. It's supported over 20 movies, it seems like. It's had crossovers with other things. It's inspired other movies. You know what I mean? So I'll rest on that. Just know that Friday the 13th is the bones upon which a lot of these movies are built.
All right, thank you, sir. Dan.
I had one choice for this, and it wasn't even close. I think by far the best slasher franchise, bar none, is Nightmare on Elm Street. I think movie to movie, it is the most unique They stand out the most. They don't rely on tropes and on just falling back on the genre as some of these other films, I think, in these two franchises have done. I think that as with every franchise, even some of the best franchises, yes, quality will vary as you go, but I think that every single movie in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise has something to offer, and I would also offer that the franchise itself is, as Coy said, this was a franchise that was self-aware way before Scream was self-aware, both specifically in one of their movies, but I think generally in that they took the character of Freddy Krueger, they transformed him into a pop icon, and then through the movies themselves, they became a reflection of what the movies were doing, which I think is what makes it so unique and the best out of all of them.
All right, 3 different franchises, 3 cool answers. Let's fight it out.
So I think that all of these films have had a quasi-sequel, reboot, rehash. All of them have had that movie that came well after. One of them was good. Not only did these guys have Freddy and Jason together that failed, they also had a Nightmare on Elm Street that was not only offensive, but very unnerving, that ruined everything. And the Friday the 13th that came out, nobody really remembers. The Nightmare franchise has a ton of weak entries. Freddy vs. Jason didn't even get the real Jason Mewes. Scream got the real Jason Mewes, and it didn't even try. The Freddy remake was not a movie that wants to be considered a horror franchise. It just felt uncomfortable. And then you've got one of the best Nightmare on Elm Streets is the Dream Master. And the next movie, Dream Story, devalues that by killing the final girl. It disrespects its own movie. And Nightmare 2 breaks all the first one's rules. This franchise is so inconsistent that when the first sequel came out, the first movie, all the rules are eliminated. The second Nightmare movie is about someone getting possessed and becoming a monster. It doesn't even deal with dreams. That's how inconsistent that franchise is.
You say inconsistent, I say innovative. The second Nightmare on Elm Street movies is one of the most unique horror movies ever made, and people always go down and say, or put it down and say like it's terrible. The second Nightmare on Elm Street movie is, I will argue, one of the only slasher films that actually operates better as a subtle metaphor for closeted homosexuality. They cast a male in the role that's usually cast for a female, and as much crass as people talk about Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and again, this goes back to the further point of the Nightmare on Elm Street series, it is absolutely wholly unique in the genre, and that's what keeps the Nightmare on Elm Street series alive and fresh.
But what are the bones if it changes its own rules? Like, what does it live
guys, but you're talking about stuff that stands the test of time and stuff that's again a malleable concept. Jason's fought pyrokinetics. He's went to New York and had a slice of pizza and knocked a guy's head off into a trash can. He's good in the outer frickin' space. We're talking about a franchise that can support all of these different adventures. And yes, this guy isn't as interesting as a guy with 1,000 fathers, which you can't have 1,000 fathers. It's going to be one sperm that gets there, man. It's going to be one sperm. All the rest is just decoration. Horrible decoration, but decoration nonetheless. Now, look, man, I just feel as though some of these, a pedophile and a set of, self-reverential kids cannot compare to an elemental death monster that comes back over and over.
The only thing you have to do to get away from Jason is break into a light jog. You are going to fall asleep. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter what you try. Your body is going to sacrifice. It is going to betray you, and Freddy's going to get you. And again, that's why what I think makes Freddy Krueger so primal as a monster, and
Jason
why he can keep coming back.
Jason can kill the people who believe in Freddy, thus giving Freddy his powers. This was proven in the crossover that they had when Jason went to Nightmare on Elm Street town and started killing all the fools that believed in Freddy. Much like any god, when you kill all their believers, he dies. But guess what? Nobody believes in Jason, and he's still trucking, baby.
Freddy Krueger owned Jason when Freddy fought him on his turf.
They were fighting in a mystical, magical fairyland.
The rules of Freddy you just said are they'll always get you, but in the second movie he doesn't even follow his own rules, and Jason's rules, he's guarding Crystal Lake. That makes the Manhattan one irrelevant, and Jason in space is not
Horror
even like
movies
considered.
Horror movies aren't about rules. Horror movies are about cool kills and fun times and originality and surprising people, and that's where I have it with Scream. The first Scream is definitely a breath of fresh air. However, if people had actually remembered a few years earlier when they saw the first Scream and talked about how cool it was that it was meta and self-aware, yeah, there was another movie directed by Wes Craven that came out a few years before Scream. It was called New Nightmare, and it was the first horror. It was not forgotten for a reason. It was the first horror movie that was meta and self-aware and deconstructing the horror franchise, and it is one of the best films in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise.
Okay, but guys, I'm over here listening to you guys jerk off over meta-ness, and I'm telling you, meat and potatoes death is what I'm selling over here.
I'm with
meat
you,
and
Ed.
potatoes death.
I'm not with the
multiple
rules
types of
over here.
kills.
Okay,
all
so-
this rules and jazz. Wait a minute, your stuff is just like Kick-Ass, right? Kick-Ass spent its whole runtime going, this is a realistic movie. If you try to fight crime, you get beat up. And the last 10 minutes, he jumps into a jetpack rig and shoots everybody with a Bond device. It violates its own rules. Much in that respect, the realism that made the first Scream very good, boy, that deteriorated very fast throughout the rest of the series, thus violating its central tenet in much the same way that you're saying mine are and Nightmares are. You know what I'm saying? So that's a whole.
But there
I just feel like that's a
is
whole.
nothing about Jason that stands out as special. His deaths are anyone can kill someone like Jason. All of the horror movies can kill someone like Jason. The mom twist in the first one is the best one because it's unexpected, and then they just betray that for the second, third, fourth, fifth. The best Jason movie is like the fifth one in the franchise, and then it falls apart again. The deaths in the last two installments weren't memorable. I can't name a bunch of Jason deaths because it's a guy with a machete that isn't that scary. Nightmare is at least scary because it's different, but I think the Nightmare element is that it has rules, and if it betrays them, what's the point?
It's not about the rules, and you're right, it is about the meat and potatoes death, which again, my movie has. Scream, a bunch of people get stabbed. Jason, how many people does he just chop with a machete or throw down some stairs or whatever, hit with a tree? Every single death in Nightmare on Elm Street is memorable. Every single death is choreographed. Like, that's the centerpiece of the franchise. And when you get into the middle of it, 1 and 2, you have some really horrific body horror deaths. You get into 3, 4, and 5, those death scenes are some of the best surrealism that we've seen, not even just in horror, but in like the 80s motion picture period. The way that those are choreographed, that's what's memorable about it. They took Freddy as from the monster. They took him to the pop icon. The films acknowledge that. Then it gets meta and self-aware, and they deconstruct that.
But one thing I would say, though, is it does, with Freddy's funniness, I think he violates a lot of the central tenets of what makes things funny, makes things scary over the course of most movies. In Scream, at least, for the whole first movie, I was scared. By the end of the first even movie, kind of, I don't want to say that, but the second and third movie, certainly, Freddy was starting to get more funny than scary. And when he's walking down the street with these big giant paper mache arms, you can call that innovative or you can call that stupid as hell.
The point of a slasher is supposed to be scary, right? At the end of the day,
freeze for 1 sec. Coy, go ahead and make this your final thought, and we'll go around and get final thoughts from everybody.
Final thought. Slasher films, horror films, the end of the day are supposed to be scary. We know what Jason is. We know he's coming. We know he's going to lumber at us very slowly. At the end of the day, we know who Freddy is. We know what the caveats are. We know all that. My franchise is the only one that has twists that actually make it matter. You don't know who's next to you. You don't know if it's the Scream killer. The first 3 films are so innovative in the killer, and then the 4th one ups the bar even more. You never know who the killer is. You never know what's coming, and you never know what to expect from Scream. You know what to expect for all these films, or you're betrayed by the fact that they don't even listen to their own stuff.
Thank you, sir. Ed, floor is yours.
Again, what you might call a standard predictable fare, I say is it's inexorable. Jason is almost a metaphor for the unfairness of death. You're chilling out trying to have some sex in the woods like a regular teenager should, and this asshole stumbles out and cock blocks you with a machete. You know what I mean? It's just nuts. It's unfairness incarnate, right? His death was unfair as a little kid. Some camp counselors who his mom was kill his mom, and now he has to stick to the revenge plan, baby. And he's locked in this inexorable cycle coming out of this swamp to kill these kids again and again. It's a real metaphor for a lot of things, and over the course of the movie, it was an allegory for many different things. So I just feel like it's an enduring horror concept, and it's the best out of these, especially with Funny Boy over here.
Ed, thank you. Dan Murrell.
Here's the secret about slasher films. At some point, you're rooting for the killer, and Nightmare on Elm Street was the only genre that actually acknowledged that and said, the star of the movie isn't whoever is out there stalking or whatever faceless person we got to star in this franchise. It's Freddy Krueger. We know where our bread is buttered, and we're going to lean into it. And they did that brilliantly. They reinvented him as he became more and more popular. They reinvented him for the 90s. They put him up with Jason. That was a success. It did do very well. I think that's a fun movie. It's a movie that I enjoy a lot. They did a remake. It wasn't great. He did a remake. That wasn't great. Scream 4, he called it an evolution in a horror film. It's a de-evolution in horror film because it became what it was parodying in the first one by the time you got to the 4th one. Freddy's the one that stays original all the way through. If you want to know who the killer is in Scream 4, have Sydney take a blood test with whoever it is that's in the cast because it's someone that's in her family because they used that twist for the last 2 in a row. And Jason, again, just jog away from him. Freddy's going to get you, and he's going to get you in a creative way. That's why I love Nightmare on Elm Street.
Time. All right. Wow. Well fought, you guys. I mean, I was just sitting here, just like listening to all the points you're making, and I'm like, this is such a great conversation about horror movies. Like, really well played. Any facts to mention?
A couple facts. So it did come up like who's the most killingest slasher.
Okay.
So I looked that up.
Body count.
In terms of body count, Jason is running away with this with 145 kills in the Friday the 13th series. Ghostface in the Scream films, 41 is the Wes Craven approved death count. Freddy only 35. Freddy's much more surgical. He's picking targets and he's really devoting time to it.
Surgical with this shit.
Yeah. Few more quick facts. I had one more. Oh, yeah. We talked about how many films in the franchises total. Ed was correct. 12 movies in the Friday the 13th franchise makes it the leader out of all these. The only other one that gets there is Puppet Master. Also 12 films.
What? There's 12
in
Puppet
the
Masters?
Puppet Master.
One puppet master.
Hey, somebody's pulling the
There are
strings.
12.
Wow.
So those were your facts.
How many leprechauns are there?
I'll look that up. I'll
Okay,
get to
thanks.
that one.
Oh, I have one factual question. One time you said Jason Mewes. Did you mean Jason Voorhees?
No, Jason Mewes is Jay and Silent Bob were in the Scream franchise because New Line owned them both, and it was a funny cameo. And they had a fake Jason Mewes pop up in Jason and Freddy, and he was like this poor man's Jason Mewes, and I always thought that was funny. They couldn't get him, but Scream did.
That's funny. Gotcha.
News facts.
Okay, noted.
New show.
Yeah. Like I said before, this was an amazing conversation. You all came with serious knowledge and really broke down the horror genre and where your franchise stands in the horror genre. Coy, I feel like you got knocked down a little bit by Ed, who talked about your franchise violating its own rules a little bit, and it not having the consistency of the other franchises in terms of some of the kills and some of the inventiveness along the way. But you made great points. But I feel like, to me, it came down to Ed and Dan with Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. And I feel like Dan just made the stronger case as far as his franchise being more unique movie to movie, Freddy being so compelling, and then being self-referential and playing with the idea of who Freddy was. It was a damn good fight, but my vote goes to Dan Murrell on this. Lon.
So ultimately, I agree. I think it really came down to sort of Ed versus Dan, and I think they both made a lot of great points, but ultimately, I thought Dan had a couple really good points that just went kind of unanswered. I thought the New Nightmare coming out 2 years before the Scream films, that really took Coy down. Really a good unanswered point about that franchise actually going sort of meta first. But I thought the real killer point was you end up rooting for the killer in these movies, and the Nightmare on Elm Street films, they're the only ones that have really soaked that into their bones, made Freddy the hero. So I'm going to go Dan.
All right, Dan, you take the point. First question out of the gate. Daniel Radford, what they saying on that YouTube poll?
Looking up at that poll, the poll agrees. The poll has got Nightmare on Elm Street at 65%, Scream at 23%, and Friday the 13th at 11%.
Damn. That's a little disrespectful to Friday the 13th. 11%?
1% per movie, almost.
Also, I do think he's not guarding Crystal Lake. It's like revenge against horny teenagers. I didn't know
it's not like one of the owls who is the guardians.
I don't know. I didn't feel like that maybe rose to the level of a fact check, but it's not. He's not like out like a bouncer, like you can't come into this lake. Like, that's not what those films are about.
Any other fun ideas out there for best horror franchise that wasn't mentioned? Best slasher franchise?
A lot of people were like, "Where my Halloween at, though?"
Yep.
We had some people coming through with. We had some people come through with Hellblazer. We had a lot of people coming through with Evil Dead.
Yeah.
So those were kind of the biggies.
I want to do Final Destination with death as the concept as a slasher.
I almost asked if I could do Final Destination.
And I put in that weird spot of like, that's an easy thing to chop your legs off if someone's like, that doesn't count. So like Final
I feel like we would have probably counted Final Destination.
It's a real good franchise.
Yeah, Coy and I might have.
Where my faces of death fans at?
Every time I'm films on movie fights.
Every time I'm on a highway.
Logging trucks?
Yeah, a highway with logging trucks or those swinging scythes that are hanging up in the back or whatever.
Lon just had a great comment that I just want to make sure everyone heard. No snuff films on movie fights.
Save it for for snuff fights, you guys.
All right, we are
Snuff
going into
fights,
question
number
number 2. Dan Murrell out to a 1-0 lead. Okay, the new film 8th Grade is getting really great reviews. Who gives the best child actor performance in any movie ever? Wow, this is a great question. Who gives the best kid actor performance in any movie ever? We are going to start with player number 2 because it's question number 2. Ed.
Well, I think this is a really interesting choice. My choice was Natalie Portman in The Professional. I believe for a bunch of reasons, one of which she actually grounds the film. I think this might be the best performance. I love Luc Besson as a director, but this particular performance seems like a lot of her. She seems to be very much acting. And one thing I'd like to establish as part of my criteria for judging this is the actual acting ability of the child. There are certain, acting performances that are basically parlor tricks or kids being kind of psychologically coerced into some weird semblance of reality, like, hey, I'm going to punch your mom if you don't look at this alien or whatever, you know what I mean? And I just feel like Natalie Portman is really acting. I really feel as though she understands what she's doing. She's not being just, psychologically prodded. I really believe like she understands how important her performance is to this motion picture. And I think that's a real criteria for best kid performance.
Thank you. By the way, Lon, I want you to fact check directors threatening.
That's a true thing. They would tell someone, "Oh, your dog just died," and
Wow.
Sean.
Oh, wow.
That's a real thing.
Got it.
Thanks so much.
I'm on it.
Up next, Dan.
I feel like Ed was targeting me because my pick is my pick is Henry Thomas in E.T., who does share screen time with an extraterrestrial for much of the movie. And Ed's pick and Coy's pick coming up. There's no, you can't make an argument these are any of them bad performances. So it's really just kind of going on how I register it and how it hits me when I see a film. And I look at Henry Thomas, and I think that when you have child actors, it's sort of just like expected that like, oh, you just act childlike. Just, they're kids, right? But like, it's not that easy. It's actually pretty hard for kids, particularly to act like kids on screen. And I think Henry Thomas is able to pull off so many different sides of his character. He does have a childlike side, but he's also a child of divorce. You can kind of see that weighing on him a little bit, and then he has this incredible thing happen to him, and just the emotions that this movie puts him through, just the fear, the terror, the wonder, the joy, the heartbreak, the sadness, the grief. Like none of it is scene stealing. None of it seems kind of cloying or sappy like you can get with kid actors. It's very naturalistic, childlike performance. And the whole movie, I think, really rests on it. And that's always impressed me, and it's always the performance that kind of comes to mind when I think of actors in this genre or of this age. So that's my pick.
All right, Henry Thomas in E.T. Back around to Coy.
There are certain performances that when you see them, there's the new bar that is set. Like when I think of what like Heath Ledger did with the Joker, and when I think of Marlon Brando in The Godfather, and only one kid ever has done that for me. Only one kid. I didn't categorize it as a child performance. I was just like, this changes my opinions on performance. And that's Abraham Atta in Beasts of No Nation. And this is a movie that, worst case scenario, I lose this entire fight, more people watch Beasts of No Nation. Because this kid in this movie isn't just a child. He ages 20 years before our eyes. I have never seen anything like what this kid accomplishes. Abraham Atta goes from being a happy child to orphaned to unwilling soldier to willing soldier to mercenary before our eyes. If you watch the trailer, in 2.5 minutes you can see a boy lose his innocence and steal scenes from Idris Elba. No one can steal scenes from Idris Elba. A freaking child does. Beasts of No Nation, it's such a hard subject matter. You see children murdered. You see the actual depths of depravity of humankind, and the whole time you're seeing it through the eyes of a child, and you're mourning his innocence while going, what's going to happen next? He carries an AK-47 with more weight than I've seen any any action movie do. He carries the depths of killing more than I've seen adult performers do. Abraham Atta shouldn't have just won the Oscar. He should be considered Marlon Brando level in one role, because I've never in my life seen someone lose the light in their eyes, and then he shows up in Spider-Man Homecoming. He's like, hey, I'm a kid. I was like, what? I thought he was an actual child they found and abused, but he's a kid. Like, I couldn't follow him on social media because it would betray the movie, because this to me is seeing someone lose their innocence, and to me it's the depths of performance that there's the evolution from child to adult that's doing horrible things.
All right, fight it out, everybody.
Well, I as impassioned as that was, and boy, I want people. It was beautiful. I mean, that was F. Lee Bailey-esque. But the thing is, and I want more people to watch that movie. But it does have a few crutches that help the performance. One big thing is voiceover. That kid has more voiceover than Ray Liotta. And it really sets the table for the subtle acting choices that he does employ in the selling of this. And obviously the subject matter is so huge and so visceral and so dramatic, for lack of a better word, that it also helps the performance. This trifle of a French assassin movie that Natalie Portman grounds with the gravitas of her parents getting killed by police and her having to go to an assassin and her selling us on that fanciful concept. I just feel like that's a big acting challenge. You know what I mean? Rather than something that's so real and so grounded in and of itself. So I do believe he had some help.
I mean, it's definitely an acting challenge, but I've also kind of felt like when you talk about key to the movie, what's integral to the movie, and again, we're splitting hairs here because these are the three really good performances.
Yeah.
I saw this list. I was
Right. Yeah. This was the shit round.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
But when I watch The Professional, I kind of feel like she is one element of that film, but I think you also have another completely almost sort of separate element with Gary Oldman and Jean Reno and their kind of thing going on over here, and then you have Natalie Portman going on over here, and she's great in the movie, but I'm looking at the movie and how does everything sort of lock together. While she's great, I don't, other than sort of allowing it to be grounded a little bit and humanize him a little bit, because Jean Reno is such a kind of a removed character, I don't think it's as integral and as key to the movie as Henry Thomas is for E.T., because literally the whole movie rests on his shoulders, and really his shoulders alone. His co-star for most of the movie is a piece of rubber with a person inside of it. It's something that, not only does he not have a co-star, he doesn't have a co-star like an Idris Elba. He doesn't have a co-star like a Jean Reno to play off of. He's playing off of a puppet, probably usually half there, somebody smoking under the table. I don't know. The 80s were crazy. So it's the idea that you're going on this journey with him, and even in the process of making the movie, you don't even have that support system, as far as obviously you have great directors at the helm for all of these, but you don't have the rest of that net that I think that these performances had. For me, when I think of, I love Leon the Professional, but when I think of her performance, she's playing an archetype. She's not playing a fleshed out character. She's playing Jodie Foster in Taxi Driver. She's playing a thing we've seen before, and she does it very well. But if you actually watch that with scrutiny, it's not as layered as it's a performance that is that thing. If you remember Leon the Professional, you're like, that is what a child put in that situation is doing. It never is more than that to me. And I remember Gary Oldman's "Bring me everyone," and you remember Jean Reno being this cartoon, and she does bring all that together to a point, but it's very, this is the role she needs to play. And for me, Henry Thomas was, I remember Reese's Pieces, I remember all of the kids in the movie, I remember Drew Barrymore, I remember the imagery. I don't remember Henry Thomas doing a lot. I remember him being there, and to me, Henry Thomas plays a role that is a kid in imagination. He's playing a wide-eyed kid. I was a kid that imagined I had an alien friend. My character is imagining killing people, and it starts out with him as innocent as your character and ends as destroyed as your character. My character is the arc between your two characters, and he does it with such depth that there's no way to see that person as anything except the character. But that's saying that Elliot and Henry Thomas, that they don't have an arc, and they absolutely do have an arc. He does start as just a kid, and you go from the beginning of that movie, and then the last shot of that movie, the last shot of E.T., it's his face. It's Elliot's face, and you can see on his face, no words, no voiceover, nothing, what this experience has done to him. He looks adult. He's kind of like you were saying. He looks grown up. He looks matured. This thing has changed him, and you see that on his face. And again, to say wide-eyed kid, like, that does a great disservice to what his performance is. He's not just playing a wide-eyed kid. He loses his best friend and gets him back and sees things that he never thought he would see.
Much in that same way, calling calling what Natalie Portman did some ingenue performance is really reductive, because what she does is show you that this Neverland Ranch ass without professional dude, right? He's got the kid, but it's the thing is, for the people who believe that Michael Jackson was innocent, he's just a kid. He sees her doing Marilyn Monroe and dressing up and all this different stuff, and he just sees another kid because he never had a chance to grow up. He's drinking freaking milk at 45 after he's killed 500 people. He's a baby in his head, and he's got this other character to ground him to, much like Kurt Rambis for the old Lakers, tie that team together as a glue guy. She's the glue guy of a very fanciful, kind of ridiculous movie, and it's still one of Luc Besson's best movies because he never, I don't think, again, had somebody tie together all the ridiculousness he throws at the wall the way that she did in this movie. So I think it is a little bit reductive to call her just sort of an ingenue.
About a minute left, so let's just a free-for-all here. If anybody has a point they want to get across, get it in.
I think that it's easy to convey emotion through tragedy, and that's what both of these performances are. It's these kids that have gone through tragedy and tragic events in their lives, and I think it is much harder to, paradoxically, it's harder to be an every kid, an every man, you know, somebody who's just an average kid that you'd see on the street who has these extraordinary things happen to him. I think it is more difficult to pull off, and I think that it is a harder thing than sort of these things that, like, you get audience sympathy through tragedy, and I think you have to earn that more.
Oh, I would say just once again, to ground this, I understand this kid's going to get mad Oscars, but Natalie Portman is an actual actor and looks at her Oscar every day. This kid sells insurance. I don't know. What does the ET kid do?
Irrelevant. Objection, Your Honor.
I feel like when you look at these two films, they have cult followings for a reason. E.T. is about the imagery, it's about the iconography, it's about what Spielberg made you feel, it's about that emotion, it's not about his performance. When you look at The Professional, you remember these iconic moments, you remember the grandiose nature of what Luc Besson assembled. You described, half of your last argument was about how good Jean Reno was, not even about Natalie Portman. I feel like it's a piece of a puzzle, but she's not the core, he's not the core. My character, without my character, you have no eyes into apartheid. You have no eyes into Blood
Where do you
Diamonds.
think that emotion came from, Coy? It came from Elliot.
I think of Drew Barrymore more than Elliot in that film.
She helps us.
Wow. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff, Ellis. Lon Harris, please go ahead and give us some factualities, and then weigh in with your opinion,
Sure.
please.
Not a lot of facts to correct. We do know Henry Thomas, it's gone viral. He had a very impressive audition for E.T., so he was not tormented on set. Nobody threatened to punch his mom. It looked like he was sad about aliens.
Spielberg After Dark.
It's great. It literally ends with Spielberg saying, like, congratulations, you got the job.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very nice. I recommend watching it if you haven't seen it. Also, 3 actors did bring E.T. to life. 2 of them were little people. One of them was a 12-year-old actor who was born without legs. He would walk around on his arms, and that's what gives E.T. his sort of unique gait in some of those scenes. So that came up. I thought I would bring that up.
Yeah,
I thought these are 3 great performances. These are 3 amazing movies. If you haven't seen Beasts of No Nation, I highly recommend it. It's really terrific. Ultimately, I thought, Coy had so many good points. The passion of it, I thought he really brought everything together really well. And I think ultimately the point that the film is centered on Abraham Atta. These other films, there's a lot of memorable elements. There's a lot of things that people sort of picked up on. In that film, that whole movie really does rise and fall on that performance. So I'm going with Coy.
Lon, you know what? I don't want to be a puppet here, or some kind of canary or parrot and just echo what you said. But like, you kind of reach into my brain and grab a lot of thoughts that I had. I thought Coy really waged an argument here about just taking us on that journey through this child's face, through this child's performance, through his acting, and just I was visualizing it as you were talking about it. I'm like, yeah. And so Dan and Ed both made great, cogent arguments, but man, you really just like, it was impactful.
That we were cogent.
Everyone watch Beasts of No Nation. If I do nothing else today, the movie's so good.
Coy, I mean, you really sold it. So it goes to Coy, and
really
Coy gets the point.
It's really good. So,
Danielle,
so awareness to that brilliant film.
I'm really glad.
Looking at the polls, the audience agrees. They had Beasts of No Nations, Abraham Atta with 46%. These were incredibly close. Henry Thomas for E.T. at 28%, and then Natalie Portman, Leon the Professional, 25%. Some other things that people brought up, Kirsten Dunst, An Interview with the Vampire, Haley Joel Osment, The Sixth Sense.
Anybody bring up Mac and Me?
I always bring up
Oh, yeah.
Jodie Foster in Taxi Driver,
Yep.
Daphne Keane in Logan, and then Brian on Twitter, who goes at Gunner921, says, the baby in Baby's Day Out, that baby did all its own stunts.
Boom.
I saw E.T. and like the two most classic cult movies about children. I was like, what do I even do?
I almost picked Linda Blair. That was my second choice. It was tough. It was a toss-up for me. Maybe I should have gone the other way.
Did anyone online, did you say Anna Paquin? Did anyone mention Anna Paquin?
I saw
from
a couple
panel?
in the chat mention Anna Paquin.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
she
she
had
won
to be
an
in a
Oscar.
movie with Harvey Keitel's Ding Dong.
Haunting.
A lot of people have had to be in the Harvey Keitel's.
That's true. All right, it's Coy won, Dan won, Ed yet to get on the board, and we go to question number 3. The Joker origin movie, it's official. What other Batman villain deserves a standalone origin movie? Oh, yeah. And we are opening up one of the great rogues galleries of all time, maybe the greatest, to explore and pick our villain. All right? What Batman villain deserves a standalone movie? Dan.
It's going to sound like a joke, but it's not. I looked through the rogues gallery and I went with a villain that is not a household name, but one that I thought was very intriguing. He's a villain named Calendar Man. Here's what I love about Calendar Man. He is obsessed with numbers, just like me. He is obsessed with heists and planning elaborate crimes. They always coordinate with certain days of the month, with holidays, things like that. Everyone is unique. And the other thing that I love is that he's not a particularly good criminal, but he gets by on enthusiasm and heart. And I think I want to see this side of the Bat universe. After so long of seeing these villains who are growling at the camera and scowling in the shadows, in a world such as Gotham City, you are going to have criminals who are on the wrong side of the law, but gosh darn it, are they trying hard. And they don't all need to be trying to destroy the world, and they don't all need to be have plans of world domination. And I think this would be, dare I say it, kind of a fun movie in the Batman universe.
All right. Dan coming in with Calendar Man. Back around to Coy.
I picked the Moriarty to Batman Sherlock. I picked the yin to the yang of the world's greatest detective. I want a movie to focus on the mind of the Batman. I want Riddler, man. I want a guy who's gonna... I want a movie that has equal parts neo-noir and Seven. I want a movie that makes you think and discern and digest and be disgusted but also invested. I want a movie where you're studying the mind of Batman. I want Prisoners by way of Batman, and the best man for that job is the Riddler. The Riddler is underappreciated. We've had a Jim Carrey Riddler, and anytime we put Jim Carrey in something, it's Jim Carrey by way of. It's not the character, it's Jim Carrey's blankety blank. Just like Jack Nicholson's blankety blank with the Joker, like that was Jack Nicholson makeup on. Like the Riddler just put on a green thing. I want people to know who the Riddler is, so not only is it important to the movie itself, it's important to the Batman mythos. This is the only character I feel like hasn't gotten his comeuppance. He hasn't gotten the respect he deserves, and dare I say, he's the only mind that is stronger than Batman's. He's not trying to dominate the world necessarily. He just wants to outthink the smartest detective in the world, and the Riddler would give us a movie that is small, that is nuanced, that is intelligent, and that can be challenging the audience with Sorkin-esque dialogue, Denis Villeneuve directing, and just something that's so different, smart, taut, and a new Batman, which is what we need.
All right, thank you, Coy. Ed.
I thought long and hard about the person I was going to bring for this battle because I wanted to present somebody whose actual origin I would want to see. And a person whose origin could even make 1 to 3 movies even. A person you could actually build something around. And the only person is Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul for the other people. But the bottom line is Ra's al Ghul, Ra's al Ghul is an amazing character, proven to be immortal. He literally bathes in a lava pit to stay young, kind of like Tom Cruise does. He's one of these just mystical ephemeral. He commands an army of ninjas. He bathes in lava, and he only wants the best for his daughter, man. You know, he's just a good guy. And I really think all these people talking about, Killmonger was right, the Ghost was right from Ant-Man. Boy, you talk about a villain who may be right, even though his methods are wrong. He's an ecological terrorist. He's trying to stop us from ruining the world. So somebody who adopted that philosophy, as much as we geeked over Thanos, we can geek over this guy's wonderful, long, beautiful, epic Godfather 2-esque origin story.
All right. Wow. Fight it out, y'all.
So I feel like Ra's al Ghul's already been modernized in a really intelligent way. I feel like we just had a Ra's al Ghul that was more interesting than the character has been in the comics. And I also feel like it's not an origin that we really need to see because it's so familiar. And to be, at the end of the day, he's a swashbuckling guy with a Lazarus pit. Like, that's a very 10-minute origin to me. And he's kind of weird to his daughter. Like, he's abusive, and I don't want to follow a story that's like, Talia's kind of like, it doesn't seem fair to give him an origin movie because we, one, just had one, and two, the character is so flimsy on paper. For me, the Calendar Man is a poor man's Riddler, so I would actually love, and I thought of this before you said Calendar Man, then it came into play as a movie to set up the Calendar Man as an opening villain and then have planted seeds that the Riddler takes credit for or misleads people on. So he's like that opening patsy character, because Calendar Man, you can't do an origin, much less a whole movie against Batman. Riddler's the only one of these characters that you can have a tech genius, you have a Silicon Valley-esque character, you've got a newsroom-esque plot device that you follow along, and then all he wants is to be proven to be the smartest. This is a guy that just wants to be like, guys, validate me. That's interesting, and that's also very 2018. Ra's al Ghul, we've seen. Calendar Man is a poor man's Riddler.
What, do you think we haven't seen the Riddler? Like, where will I ever see the Riddler match wits against Batman? I guess I'll have to go to the comic books, or to Frank Gorshin, or to Gotham, currently on the air, or to Batman the Animated Series, or to Batman Forever. The Riddler is one of the villains that has been the most, like, he's smart, and he matches up well with Batman. I know this. I've seen it. I've seen it across many different media. And again, Ra's al Ghul, I've seen the ninjas, I've seen Talia al Ghul, I agree with Coy, I liked how they reinvented Ra's al Ghul. And again, these are both movies dredged in darkness and shadow, and it's like we have so many of those corners that are exposed right now in the DC universe.
But that is what I would like to thank you for making that point for me. This Calendar Man movie would be DC trying to do Ant-Man and failing. That's literally what would happen. It's almost Adam West again. Yeah,
like, I'm afraid of the tone where they would land.
Yeah, I think that tone is very, very tricky. And guys, yes, you've seen him as a guy with a bunch of ninjas, but how does one procure a bunch of ninjas?
You go hire a bunch of ninjas.
No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't.
You want 10 ninjas? I get you 10 ninjas by lunchtime.
This is how you get a bunch of ninjas. Sometime in prehistory, your Alexander the Great-esque feats that you do garners you a cult-like respect, and a group of people breed themselves to be your servants forever.
Sounds like Batman Begins.
Somebody get to that? No. Batman Begins was typical Nolan-esque charlatanism, where he goes, "Oh, this is just some guy who's just sort of passed down like the Dread Pirate Roberts." There's no indication that he's immortal or awesome or any of that stuff.
Get
out of here with your Mandarin. Get your Mandarin out of my DC movie. All right, that bait and switch. It's this Nepalese guy. I know, but it's pre-Mandarin,
but
baby.
I also feel like the Riddler doesn't have to be dark. The Riddler's not a necessarily dark character. He can be dark and he cannot be dark, but he's definitely not Jim Carrey.
But I'm tired of these people fighting Batman, where if Batman solves your trick and he gets up to where you are, he just beats your ass. I'm tired of these people being Batman's main villains. That sucks and that's dumb. Ra's al Ghul can give him a fight.
But how many times have we seen Batman in a match of wits within a pin? How many times have we seen him fight a race? It's going to end in a fight with Batman in the lava pit and things.
I would much rather see a smart tale than just a punch.
I would much rather see Batman taking on a criminal.
Batman won't even show up in any of these movies. The whole point is these people as a standalone origin film, correct?
Exactly.
So let's take all the Batman.
Batman's not going to be there. You don't need him. You don't need him, and that's what's great about Calendar Man. It's about Calendar Man. That's what my movie's about. It's about him. It's about the character. It's about the guy. This argument of just like, oh my God, this tone will never work. You'll never be able to get this tone in this universe. Yeah, they said about Guardians of the Galaxy, about the talking raccoon in the tree. That'll never work in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Guess what? It did, because you got a great director and you made it work.
But both of these guys haven't been really in movies because, my man, cinema isn't kind to math problems and writing stuff. Cinema's not kind to that. Cinema's not kind to your plans.
And that's what Calendar Man is.
Cinema's also kind to thinking. You love bait and switches. I personally love when I'm trying to discern what the ending is.
Cinema is kind to Lawrence of Arabia with an undead lava pit.
Sword and Sandal movies haven't done well in years, and David Fincher-esque murder mysteries have. At the end of the day, one of these is cinematically charged, and that is not the poor man's Riddler. It's the real Riddler.
Riddler
It's not
doesn't
Indiana
murder
Jones.
I do not see the
anything.
fact that this is the poor man's Riddler. As a matter of fact, I don't think it's the poor man's Riddler. As I said before, he's not a genius.
But he leaves riddles based on calendars. He
you're
sets things
assuming.
up.
No, you're taking your knowledge of him and applying it to my project.
So what does
I never
Calendar Man
said that
to
he
you?
left riddles. He plans these elaborate heists that are based on days of the week. He tries to pull them off. These elaborate costume sets and everything else. It's a fun movie.
All I'm saying
it's
is-
a good time.
Th-
There's a
this is-
villain out there that's actually having fun being a villain, not
But
liking
Let's take a
offenses
moment
really
here.
hard.
But if this,
I would like. Hold that thought. I'd like to hear who do you envision playing your villain in an origin story. Take a moment and let us have it.
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray.
Yes.
All right. Bill Murray is Calendar
Bill
Man.
Murray is my calendar man. Bill Murray.
Okay. Fun. Coy.
I would like to see Michael C. Hall. I would like to see Dexter, but without that horrible ending. I would like to see someone. He also looks like him. He's got the red hair. He can do the chops. I want to see someone that you can watch, think, and you be invested in it. So you don't have the math problem. You have someone that you're like, oh, I'm fascinated by his choices, and whether he makes the right or wrong choice, you were always on Dexter's side. So someone whose pathos is stronger than the decisions they're making for you. So you're invested in the man, and that's Michael C. Hall.
Ed.
I mean, I would love. I don't really have a specific actor, and I know I'm going to get killed for this. But somebody with the sort of, I'd like to see somebody with a Fassbender-esque gravitas take on Ra's al Ghul. A lot of these guys who have played him are just more or less some sideburns and an attitude, even to a certain extent, Liam Neeson's version of him. So I would really like to see somebody who plays the pathos of somebody immortal and somebody who truly has seen it all.
Well, we've seen Assassin's Creed.
But I just want to say one thing. One thing.
Please.
Jeez. Calendar Man, okay, this is paper, rock, scissors over
By
here.
the way, let's make this your final
Yeah,
thought. Okay, we'll go
I-
around and get final thoughts from
Calendar
everybody.
Man is a poor man's version of this guy's character, and the Riddler, the only time in film that he's ever done anything cool, he deduced what Batman's identity was, and went into his cave and broke all his shit up. That is the definition of a Ra's al Ghul move. The best version of this character was just aping stuff that Ra's al Ghul has done. And his character is inferior to that character. Therefore, I win.
All right, thank you, Ed. Dan, final thought.
Again, you're both saying, oh, so-and-so is a poor man's version of that character, and I completely disagree. Again, going back to Guardians of the Galaxy, that was what, they're just a poor man's Avengers. They're the Space Avengers. What? No, you get talent behind it. You get a script. You get a director. I think Wes Anderson would be very good for this movie, by the way. I would love to see his take on this material. And you make it unique. That's what did it. Everyone in comics is a poor man's version of somebody. How many poor man's versions of Batman and Captain America? How many poor man's versions of Superman have been turned into great characters? Look at Thor. Isn't he kind of a poor man's version of Superman? He's a god coming up from on high, flying around. Yeah, but you make him a great character when you adapt him to the cinematic form, and that's what you do with Calendar Man. I'm so tired of movies that are showing me an alternate take on things that I already know. I already know that the Riddler's smart. This is supposed to be a standalone origin movie, and all Coy talks about is how well his mind matches up with Batman. I know that the Riddler and Batman are both smart, and if they think at each other, that eventually Batman's going to win the thinking contest. I know that Ra's al Ghul is immortal. We've tread that ground, and his daughter, and the ninjas. I know that, and the audience knows that. We saw what just happened with Solo. People are getting tired of seeing movies about the same characters over and over again, treading ground that we've already tread, just with slightly 10 degrees to the left. Calendar Man is a different tone. You can make it work with the proper hands and in the proper guidelines. It is a different kind of villain. It is not the poor man's version of the Riddler, because I think he stands out. He's not leaving riddles and he's not leaving clues. You put that projection on it, not me. And I think that you can have a really unique, fun villain that does, just these heists, not just sitting in a dark lair. We have so much of that. Let's have a villain that goes out there and actually enjoys being a supervillain.
All right, thank you, Dan. Coy.
So much the same way you think I put the riddles on your character, I think you put the dark on mine. I've never seen the Riddler as a dark character. He is wearing a bright green suit and a bowler cap, and he runs around with a cane and has hijinks, but he's not all the way Jim Carrey. The character in the comics is the only one of these characters to have taken out Batman. He won many times. He might outthink him, and I'd rather see a movie where someone is thinking their way through problems. And if you says he doesn't do riddles, what is he setting up? How is he setting up things to happen on certain days? If there's no solution, he's just like hitting mouse traps. Like, what's the goal of the movie?
No,
if things
he's
just falling
Planning
apart.
heists.
And then, but he's not. There's no active action if he's just Ocean's 11ing by himself. And then at the end of the day, a thinking man's movie is much more exciting. So I agree with these two, because if we're talking about poor man's whatever, poor man's Indiana Jones. That's all like this guy is. Ra's al Ghul's just Indiana Jones, but with a Lazarus pit. So at the end of the day, I'd rather see a Taylor Sheridan scripted, David Fincher directed movie where you're learning about a very smart man that wants to control the narrative of his own life and wants to be appreciated for being smart. You don't need Batman because all the guy wants is justification for being smarter than everyone around him, and he's just bored.
1,000-year-old Indiana Jones would be badass.
That's happening.
All right,
It's just
time. Wow.
It's coming out 2021.
We have one.
It's true.
Shooting
Just got
2019.
Yeah, it's true. Lon, what's the fact check on this?
Not a ton of facts to check. Ra's al Ghul, not immortal. His life has been extended for hundreds of years because of the Lazarus Pit.
Right.
We also should add, the Lazarus Pit, it's not lava. It's sort of, one of the Lazarus Pits is connected to the volcanic system of an island, but the Lazarus Pits are full of life-extending chemicals. They're chemical pools. They're not lava.
Comics.
It's full of chemicals. It's just science.
Were you able to fact check? Were you able to fact check Dan's claim that you can hire a bunch of ninjas off Craigslist?
Our ninjas should be here within 15 or 20 minutes. If you go on Fiverr, you just search ninjas.
They're on their way.
Hold on, I'm ordering ninjas for later.
Mechanical Turk. It's amazing what you can find.
Great. Wow, this was a bang up battle, and so right out of the gate, Dan, I admire you for making an off the beaten track choice, but I feel like your arguments were great, but they set you on your heels a little bit, and you were forced to defend the idea of taking out-of-the-box choices more than you were able to sell the character to us. So because of that, for me, it came down to Ed and Coy. And, man, two very different movies, but the one who intrigued me most and tied to the question, who deserves a standalone origin movie, was Ed, okay? Coy really sold a fascinating film to me. I mean, I want to see your movie. Like, I want to see your movie yesterday. But your movie and just the depths of Ra's al Ghul's world explored in those origins, that was the best answer for me. Lon.
Well, I have to say, Dan had me for most of the time. I think usually I dismiss the it's been done argument on movie fights, but in this case, there's a very compelling case to be made because we really have never seen anything like Calendar Man done. We have seen both of these other characters, a bunch of other media. I thought that was a really compelling argument, but then when Ed started really describing his Ra's al Ghul movie, I have to admit, I was sort of won over. The large-scale sort of adventure, sweeping adventure of it really sold me. For Coy, I felt like you kind of were at cross purposes. You opened with, it's like neo-noir, it's like 7 really dark, really gritty references, and then you ended up being like, no, it doesn't have to be dark, it can be funny, he's in a bowler hat. So I sort of didn't know where to go with that, so I'm going with Ed.
You and I have agreed on everything. Let's get married already.
It's really simpatico.
All right, Ed, you get yep, it's the owls. Ed, you get the point. Danielle, what's YouTube say?
All right, so as of right now, YouTube went 44% for Calendar Man, 28% for Riddler, and 27% Ra's al Ghul. Some of the other names that were mentioned were Mr. Freeze, Hush, and Red Hood. Those were kind of like the biggies.
Need Red Hood though.
And then James White also Gator with like a 4 and some G4TOR24 said, "Look, we all know who the real Batman villain is." Joel Schumacher. I don't agree. Gotta hear both sides.
I'm just surprised that Gator didn't say Killer Croc. Anyway.
That's right there.
Guess what, y'all? We are tied 1-1-1, so we are going to the tiebreaker.
I've never done a tiebreaker.
Nicely done, JTE and Johnny on the spot with that tiebreaker graphic. All right, so here's how the tiebreaker works. I'm going to ask the question, and then you'll each answer, and then we'll go around and hear your elaboration on the answers in the order that you spoke, okay? And you'll each get 20 seconds to speak on your answer, and then we'll go back around, same order, 10-second rebuttal. And then Danielle giving her own opinion, not the internet's this time. Oh, no, we love it! Lon and myself will decide who does not move on to the speed round. there we go. And this
Basically, a 3-person speed round.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically, thank you.
Gotcha.
All right, here's the question. Henry Cavill gave a bit more insight on early Man of Steel 2 discussions this week. Who should be the villain in the Superman sequel?
Brainiac.
Brainiac.
Mr. Mixaplix. Mr. Mixaplix.
Mr. Mixaplix.
I have to check my pronunciation.
Internet.
Okay. And Ed.
Me say Bizarro.
All right. So we have Brainiac, Mr. Mixaplix, and Bizarro. All right. Coy, you know how it works. 20 seconds begin whenever you speak. And again, the order will be Coy, Dan, Ed.
We've seen DC villains base their merit on strength, on going after things, on these crazy schemes. I want to see it based on smarts and smarts alone. Brainiac is brilliant. He's visually stunning. He brings an alienness to it. I want to see more of the outside world of Superman. Plus, I want to see Superman being good, his wholesomeness, all of that juxtaposed against Brainiac's pure evil trying to take over things. I want to see a different kind of villain for Superman. I want to see a classic villain. I want to see a visually stunning villain. And the only one of those is Brainiac because he hasn't been seen before.
Time. All right, Dan.
I agree. I want to see a lighthearted Superman. I want to see Superman take on a villain that's going to challenge him, but isn't going to try to destroy Metropolis, destroy the world. He's a trickster. He's somebody from another dimension that's going to come in and try to shake things up. And I think he can do that with Mr. Mixaplix. He can mess around with Superman's life. He can mess around with Superman's friends. Again, not every big superhero movie has to be a trudge through world-changing stakes and the ultimate villain. Sometimes they can just kind of be
20 seconds whenever you speak.
I understand Bizarro seems like a ridiculous choice, but this is the thing I would do. I would make him much like Brainiac, a remnant of Krypton that is like almost like a clone that's made up of excess kryptonite stuff and Superman stuff that mated somehow in the birthing matrix. And I think that villain, if Superman of these movies defeats that in front of everybody, it would show that, look, man, I'll handle you when evil stuff comes around.
Time. 10-second rebuttals.
I feel like Mr. Mixaplix is too much of a leap. We're not there yet, and it's got to stay canon to at least have the evolution of the thing evolve. And Doomsday, we're definitely not ready for him. We already kind of had that in the first two movies. Like the way they did both of those characters were Doomsday-esque. Doomsday was very similar to him, so we're not ready for those. Mine is.
Dan?
I think we're at a point with Superman. He's in a rebirth. It doesn't matter what the canon is. You have a new version on the character. We saw that in Justice League, and I don't want another Kryptonian rebirth, Matrix rebirth. We had that with Zod. We had that with Doomsday. I don't want another remnant of Krypton.
This is horrible, and it seems like I'm almost abdicating, but damn it, Bizarro is cool. He talks cool, and he's funny, and Brainiac is a hard sell because of all that technology, and frankly, Mitzi's Piddle Lick, I just don't get it.
Time. Wow. Oh, my goodness. Oh, this is a great moment in sports. You know what? At the end of the day, like I thought these were all great, and any one of them could have won. But at the end of the day, I thought we brought down Ed with those arguments as far as the
I had Brainiac in my head.
Brainiac
in my head, and I was like, is it too Kryptonian? Is it too? And then boom, you got it.
Yeah.
Good job.
Well, it's not decided yet, so I would say Ed does not move on, even though I really enjoyed his answer. Danielle.
As much as I enjoyed your answer, Ed, as soon as anytime someone says, I'm giving up, you gave up. I can't. You have to movie fight. You gotta stick with it. And you tanked yourself, but I love your face.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ed, well fought all the way through. Sadly, you will not be moving on to the speed round. But yes, valiant effort, good sir. It's speed round time, y'all.
Like mines as always.
Brainiac.
All right.
Fucking
So.
Brainiac.
No points were awarded in that tiebreak. It was just a tiebreak to see who makes it in. It is 1-1, Dan Coy going to the speed round. And again, same rules as we just did. First answer out, speaks first, they get 20 seconds, 10-second rebuttal after that. There we go. Gentlemen, y'all ready?
Let's do it.
All right, and same judges apply. All right, question number one. From one of our women in film donors, our good friend Dev. Which is the better film, The French Connection or Serpico?
Great question.
French Connection.
Okay.
That means Coy will be
Serpico.
arguing for Serpico. All right. Love it when we talk a little classics. Dan, you answered first. 20 seconds begin whenever you speak.
One of the things about the great things about the French Connection is it's a great example of the 70s of taking what should be a heroic figure and kind of showing different sides of dimension, making him the anti-hero. That's what you have with Popeye Doyle. He's a cop, but he doesn't play by the rules, but not in the Schwarzenegger way. And the fact that the good guy, spoiler alert, doesn't always have to win in the end. It subverted that trope, and it showed you that it's about the investigation. It was about the criminality.
I agree with what he said, except for I think mine also did a great anti-hero. I think it does not only change what police figures are seen as, it also changed our opinion of Al Pacino. It redefined a very important actor for the time, and also redefined a very important genre for the time. I think this redefined what police can be in film. I remember that just for the chase scene. I don't remember anything else. Serpico is remembered for many, many things, and the nuance of Al Pacino's performance. Gene Hackman's was just that performance. I didn't think it was that much. And this movie allowed us to evolve into what Al Pacino's become today.
Gene Hackman won an Oscar for this performance. Pacino's performance, while good, blends into the rest of his performance from the 70s. I don't think it's one of his better ones. And again, Dirty Cops is nothing new, but the fact that this guy is still fighting for good, and the fact that... 2 more seconds.
I always feel like an Oscar is enough. The movie isn't as memorable because I think of the chase scene. I don't think of the performance. When I think of Serpico, I think of everything in the film. I don't think of just one item. And Al Pacino's performance is way more than just a dirty cop. There's so much of Serpico is referenced as the dirty cop.
Time. Wow. Well played, well played. Let's start with Lons.
Two great films, two great arguments, but I think ultimately Coy's argument sort of came down to French Connection is just that chase. I just really, on a fundamental level, don't agree. There's so much great stuff in that movie. Hackman's performance did win an Oscar, so I got to go with Dan on this one.
All right, that's one for Dan. Danielle.
Why are we all letting Coy turn us into micro machines? We don't have to do this.
That's my domain. I'm trying to live to the legend.
I have to do this.
Yeah, you do. We don't.
Words.
We can take our time. I have to disagree.
You're allowed.
Yeah, I am allowed. You're right that it isn't just about the chase, and you know what? I lied. No, I agree. No, I just reread the arguments over on my laptop, and I do have to agree. I don't know that I agree with the argument that the Oscar isn't necessarily enough. I do think it is enough. So
okay, at this point, I'm not sure whether you agree or disagree with what you're saying.
I'm going with Dan.
All right, thank you, Danielle.
Dan.
There we go. That is a point for Dan. It is 2-1 Dan. Going into question 2 from the speed round. Again, 4 points is what will take the victory today. This is another question from a Women in Film donor, our friend Kim. What's the best non-Disney animated film? Best non-Disney animated movie.
An American Tail.
American Tail.
I don't know if this counts. Can I? Pre-Disney sale Toy Story. Because Pixar made it before they were owned by Disney, and Toy Story's
It's a Pixar movie.
Distributed by Disney, wasn't it?
I feel like it was distributed.
Okay.
By the time it was done and made, it was distributed by Disney.
Okay, so
Okay.
I would say go something else.
yeah.
Damn, Disney kind of runs the game. How to Train Your Dragon.
Good choice.
All right.
Cats.
An American Tail versus How to Train Your Dragon. Dan spoke first. 20 seconds begins when you speak now.
Beyond just being a great animated film, I think that it is a great story. It is the tale of immigration into America, and it actually tells a very complex story about Jewish expulsion and acceptance, the melting pot that is America. That immigrant experience told through the tale of an animated mouse. It's got the timeless search for my family. It's got great music. It's got a great story, great vocal performances.
How to Train Your Dragon does the impossible, and it makes you care about not only dragons, but Vikings in a time that, like, we've seen all of these things, but you care about acceptance. You care about what children feel. The whole movie, you feel like a leper. You feel like you're put out of the world. This movie makes you feel like you want to know these characters. It makes you care about both sides of this divide, and it makes you understand, like, when something is the last of something, it's important, and you want to coddle it. You want to warm it. Like,
I feel like How to Train Your Dragon is a fantasy. I feel like An American Tail is something that hits home for everybody. And I feel like How to Train Your Dragon was one-upped by its own sequel, How to Train Your Dragon 2. As much as I love Five Goes West, it doesn't hold a candle to An American Tail.
I don't think An American Tail holds up as well as we remember it being, whereas I think as I get older, How to Train Your Dragon just becomes more important because I think accepting others is the message of both films, but I think How to Train Your Dragon does it across species, which shows a greater depth of what that movie is.
Time. Wow. Okay. Good arguments. You know what? I gotta go with Dan on this. Selling us the fiber of the movie, and I feel like we just and then knocking it down with its own sequel. My point is for Dan. Let's go to Lon.
I agree. I just felt like Dan did a better job of selling me on like what specifically makes an American Tale sort of vital and memorable. Whereas I think Coy made a lot of good points, but you could sort of say a lot of that about pretty much any beloved animated film. I thought the specificity of Dan's argument really made it.
There we go. Dan gets that point, and it is 3-1 Dan. So this is game point. Coy, you need this to keep it going. Dan, you take this. You take the game. All right. This week marks the 30th anniversary of Die Hard. Who's the best supporting character from the original movie? That means no Bruce Willis, no Alan Rickman. Any other character?
The cop. Can I say the cop? Forget his name. Is that allowed?
Sure.
Yeah.
Al Powell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Al Powell. Reginald Vell Johnson.
I'll allow
that. Carl.
All right.
Carl.
Great. We have Al Powell versus Carl. Coy, you spoke first. 20 seconds to begin when you speak now.
Al Powell's the everyman of this film. He's the guy you relate to. He's your eyes, and I love that in a movie about cops. The cop is the one you're rooting for when there's a vigilante kind of doing his thing. Bruce Willis is the guy doing all the cool, crazy lines, but the whole time you want to know what the cop's doing, and I love that he's just like this beating heart of the film that doesn't get enough love and appreciation. He's every eye line through the film, and without him, the movie doesn't work because then the rest is just action. You need the grounded to have the action. He's that.
John McClane is what you see the eyes in the movie through. Al Powell is a nice side character that he gets to talk to in his down moments. But what I love about Carl is he's almost the ultimate evil in that movie. Hans kind of fails at everything he does. For Carl, it's personal. He's the big bad at the end of the movie. People forget that he doesn't really fight Hans. He just kind of pushes him out a window. Carl is the guy that John McClane has to defeat in order to survive.
There's the Emperor and there's Vader. You remember Vader. Hans is the number one in that movie, and I really feel like the heart of the film is more important than this secondary bad. At the end of the day, he's the secondary bad. It doesn't matter which one's bigger. He's a follow-up. The heart of the film is my character, and I love that that's a cop.
Hans is the Emperor, and Carl is Darth Vader, and you remember Darth Vader. I like the friendly cop, but I'm gonna go with the badass henchman as the better character every time. I rest my case.
All right. Well played again. Danielle.
Oh, yeah, that was a fantastic argument, but Coy really had me with the stuff about being the heart of the film, so I'm going to go with that.
You know what? I absolutely agree. Dan made a really great case for Carl, but I feel like Coy was just unbeatable in the way he laid that out. So, yep, I'm also going Coy. It is 3-2.
As a lethal weapon guy,
Ellis.
it's hard to
I would like to say I did know his name.
You did.
I knew his name.
Thank you.
That's true.
I'm just amazed
right.
Ellis didn't come up in that conversation.
There's Die Hard houses and there's lethal weapon houses. There's a clear divide in my shirt, so that was a tricky one for me.
Well, at least nobody said Urkel's neighbor.
All right. Ooh, this question is a real Sophie's Choice. It has nothing to do with the movie Sophie's Choice.
Oh, thank God.
It's a little downbeat for our purposes.
All right. Now, again, it's 3-2. Dan takes this. He takes the game. Coy takes this. He ties it up. In honor of M. Night Shyamalan's Glass, simple question. Samuel L. Jackson or Bruce Willis?
Samuel L. Jackson.
All right.
By default.
By default, you get Bruce Willis. All right. Dan, you go first for Sam Jackson. 20 seconds begins whenever you speak.
I've had a long-standing theory that people don't love Bruce Willis, they love John McClane. However, people effing love Samuel L. Jackson, so much that he is Samuel L. Jackson more than he is any other character that he has played. He has been a prestige actor from the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s. What's Bruce Willis doing? Direct-to-video. What's Samuel L. Jackson doing? Oh, I'm sorry, he's only one of the anchoring characters of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I agree with your point in the opposite. I think that Samuel L. Jackson can only play Samuel L. Jackson, whereas Bruce Willis, The Sixth Sense, and John McClane are two very different roles. He can play drama, he can play comedy, and you can count on him to be a good action star. You can count on Samuel L. Jackson to do one thing, that's be Samuel L. Jackson. You can count on Bruce Willis to bring in tickets just as much, but also be multifaceted. He's a better actor, he's got more range, and he's got the same versatility and badassness, but he can be other things as well.
Those are the two Bruce Willis movies. It's Die Hard and Sixth Sense. I can give you Pulp Fiction. I can give you the memorable scene from Coming to America. I can give you Nick Fury. I can give you any number. Deep Blue Sea. He made the great shark movie. That's why Deep Blue Sea is great. It's not the shark.
No, see, I disagree. Mercury Rising, Hudson Hawk, there's so many different depths to this man. He's got a lot going on. I know those aren't movies that are revered in the same way, but they show different ranges of acting. Just because they're not known doesn't mean they don't count. Bruce Willis has more to him.
Wow, all right. Man, how about it? You know, when you said Mercury Rising, I really had to stop and be like, wait, what was Mercury Rising? I think you made some great points, just like as far as Bruce Willis capturing certain roles, but I thought Dan laid out just a unbeatable salvo for me. I'm going Dan on this one. Lon?
Wow, I actually disagree. I think Dan came out to a really early lead, but I thought Coy really sold me by the end. I really like the versatility, and I don't know if I've ever voted for anyone in the speedrun who brought up Hudson Hawk during their argument, and I feel like I have to, so I'm going with Coy.
Okay, Daniel Radford, it's 1-1. What are you thinking?
As great as both of these arguments are, I have to go with Dan on this one. I thought that he I thought he made up better points. Plus now, LL Cool J's Deep Blue Sea song is stuck in my head.
There you go, Dan Murrell. You take the day. Wow. Well fought, everybody. Taking it to the proverbial limits. Dan, how do you...
Brainiac. Sorry.
I've been singing this whole time going, Brainiac.
I know. You know it's a good movie fight when you're just beating yourself up afterwards. Like, it was up and down all around. How do you feel going up against a felted friend for the belt?
I think I do not underestimate this felted friend. However, felted friend, you have my belt, and I'm coming for it. So get used to it, shine it up, sleep next to it, whatever you need to do, because it's coming back with me.
Would you call him a felted enemy now?
That seems mean.
That's
but
a little
he's a felted opponent.
Dan, well fought today. Well played,
Thank
as
you.
per usual. Coy, nicely done. I can't believe I can't believe anyone can hang with you in the speed round. But,
the man's held the belt. It's a deserved fight.
But you crushed it throughout. Please go ahead and plug some stuff. Tell us where you can find you.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Coy JANDREAU. You can find me on my show, Marvel Movie News, on Tuesdays. I'm on Collider Heroes on Mondays. I love being here. We got a thing coming out soon about like Ant-Man madness, and I'm just excited. Like Screen Junkies, this spot feels good. Like I loved this fight. It just felt good to like have this argument with people that I like arguing movies with. Like the magical thing about the internet is this is like relevant. Like all these questions came through. I'm like, I get to say Riddler's better than Ra's al Ghul. And, yeah, I do think Abraham Often needs more attention. Like, and
but then we also talked about the French Connection.
Yeah. Piece of No Nation now gets some love, please. It's on Netflix. It's hard to not find it.
Thank you, sir. Ed, I always love it when you come by, and you did such a fantastic job. Please tell us some stuff where you can find you. Plug some stuff.
I mean, honestly, I really felt like John Henry in here with these guys. Like, you're fighting machines, and you're barely holding on. But I do a podcast called Nerd Goat, which I'm very proud of. It's a 5-star rated podcast with a bunch of reviews. We're so 5-star rated, so we must be doing something well. And we just take interesting people and talk to them about their favorite fictional characters of all time, their nerd greatest of all time. We're gonna have everybody from Screen Junkies on it at some point, and it's just really interesting. And I'm gonna be on Comedy Central later this year on a show called New Negroes, and you can say it. It'll be my television debut.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so it's this has been a really good thing being here at Screen Junkies every Wednesday. And contributing to some of their videos and stuff, maybe doing some more now that things are settled. I love this place, and I thank you guys for the opportunity to let us show what we got.
Yeah, man.
Well, we're lucky to have dudes like you, and I feel lucky to just be around such thoughtful, smart, nerdy people. So thank you as well for being here. Lons.
That's me.
Thank you.
That's me.
Tell us where we can find you and that good stuff.
At LONS on Twitter is where to find me. Plus, hanging around Screen Junkies videos all the time. We've got some fun stuff coming out, so that's where to go.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah.
And the fabulous and talented Danielle Radford.
Hello. So just find me on all the socials. Also, for folks who've been asking about my Comic-Con schedule, I will be putting that up. I'm still waiting for things to get finalized. But if you're going to be around, come out, come see things. I will be around.
Awesome.
we're all the way done
And
Yeah.
I want to thank you for watching. I'm Hal Rudnick. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Let's talk movies. Let's just like shoot the breeze about some fun crap on Twitter and Instagram at Hal Rudnick. And yeah, what a fun time. Looking forward to that Felted Friend matchup for the belt. And thanks again for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.